I just went to AWE. In this video, I want to talk about the top 4 things that I saw related to spatial video. What's up? My name is Joey. This is VP Land, where we explore the latest developments in media technology. So I just went to AWE, Augmented World Expo. It is the 15th year that they have had this, and it is basically everything AR, VR, virtual reality, augmented reality, extended reality, all under one roof. This one is in Long Beach. I believe it is the largest expo for any AR, VR stuff in the country or possibly the world. So it was a bit of a different expo than I normally go to. I went to NAB, which is pretty much all media and entertainment technology, with a little bit of spatial video, not as much as I thought there would be. We just went to Cinegear, which is all things cameras, but AW was going on, so I kind of wanted to check it out. But I was going with a specific goal in mind. I wanted to see what was happening in spatial video. Blackmagic just announced the Ursa Cine Immersive. Canon just released a new dual fisheye lens. So there are some updates with what's happening in the world of creating spatial video, 3D video, whatever you want to call it. I did not see much, so I'm going to go over what I did find, but there wasn't as much as I expected. Anyways, let me jump into the top 4 things that I found. All right, so number 1, and this was pretty much the only company I could find where their entire product was about video, it is SpatialCut. So they are a video editor designed for the Vision Pro, specifically to edit spatial video and other types of immersive 3D type video type content. So spatial video, that is the Apple format. It's the MV-HEVC format, multi-view, where if you have an iPhone 15 Pro, it can shoot spatial video with the 2 lenses. Also, if you have a Vision Pro and you record video on the Vision Pro, that is the format that is recording on. And then presumably in the future, there'll be other cameras or devices that can shoot this type of format. But right now, you really can't do much with this format unless you have a Vision Pro. And even right now, I don't think there is really any way to edit the videos into something else. So that's what SpatialCut does. It is a video editor app inside the Vision Pro. That's sort of their first part. And then it expands to that. They did say that they are going to open it up and allow any type of video format, any type of 360, 180-degree videos shot on different devices, and for SpatialCut to work on other devices, not just the Vision Pro. But most interesting is they do have a way to convert 2D video to spatial video, 3D video. They use AI depth mapping to figure out what the depth is in the 2D video and then can convert it to 3D. That's really interesting. When I was at NAB, we did a video with ATEM, and that was sort of what I thought that they were doing, but then they said, no, basically they're a way where you can convert existing 3D videos into MV-HEVC format, but it already has to be 3D. SpatialCut can take 2D videos, doesn't have to be 3D, and convert them to 3D spatial video, MVH. We need a shorthand for just MVHEVC, defining what spatial videos are. We need a shorthand for that. Anyways, very interesting. I did ask also, if you don't have a Vision Pro or if you're working with 2D content, do you really need to work with it in the Vision Pro? And they said a desktop web version is coming where you don't have to work inside a Vision Pro if you don't want to. Obviously, the Vision Pro, if you are editing with spatial video, you would want to see it, and you need a Vision Pro to see it. But if you're doing conversions or other things like that, they said you could do that on the web soon, or a desktop app. So very cool. The whole thing was around video, spatial video. All right, number 2, the Sony spatial reality displays. So Sony had a couple things. They did have a new headset that was really interesting and impressive, designed for enterprise customers. But what I did see, which I thought was really cool, and this wasn't new, but I've seen them announce it before, but I've never seen it in person. It is their spatial reality displays. So they got 2 options. They got a 15.6-inch option and a 27-inch option. And it is a display with a camera on it that will track your face and basically display in 3D in real life without having to wear glasses. I have a lot of issues with actually seeing 3D. This goes back, I have like convergence and sufficiency stuff with my eyes. Old school 3D movies was always a pain for me to see, or I just couldn't see it at all, or it would just kind of blur. So I've always had off and on issues with like 3D stuff like this, where it's like you don't need glasses, or it's like kind of a new way to see 3D. I've had issues with seeing that. With these displays, it looked awesome. It looked really cool. More so for me on the smaller display. And also, and you can see in the video, there are 2 ways to display the display. You could either display it at a 45-degree angle, which is sort of how it comes. And I believe in that way, you can kind of see more depth if you're working in a 3D space, or you could display it vertically. And in the demo they had, it just had a dinosaur that was sticking out. we'll show you clips and stuff, but obviously you can't really grasp what it looks like on a 2D monitor, filming with a 2D camera of a 3D display. It's obviously not going to come across. But I will say the vertical monitor, which was their smaller display with the dinosaur sticking out, that looked awesome. That, for me, looked totally convincing 3D, like it was popping out of the screen. Did not have any issues or eye strain for the 20 seconds, 30 seconds that I looked at it, but it looked great. It looked really cool. The horizontal one had some more complex scenes of like boxing and some stuff that was sort of shot on a volumetric stage. That one for me, I had a harder time. Sometimes the images would blur. It wasn't as sharp and convincing as the dinosaur one. Now, it could also be there in the convention center. It's tracking faces. I know there were people like peeking over my shoulder and looking too. So it could also have gotten confused of whose face it should be tracking and what it should look like. But overall, these things looked a lot more impressive than when I read about them online. And it looked really high quality, and the 3D-ness was extremely sharp. So what could these displays be used for in relation to video production? Obviously, building 3D models, being able to work in a 3D model without having to have a headset, and being able to get a better sense of what the 3D model looks like, or also working in Unreal or virtual scenes and being able to move around and get a better sense of the depth in a monitor without having to wear headsets or do other things. So just interesting to see where this will go. And now, also just as a reminder, everything that I'm talking about here, I did do a longer interview with each company in person. They talk about it. So we'll have all the links to those videos down in the description below, or probably up here as a card, and go click on it. Check out the full interview if you want to dive into more details about any of these companies, and also hear from the creator of these companies instead of me just rehashing what we talked about. All right, third one is Playbook. So Playbook actually saw they pitched AILA a few weeks ago, and we got some videos about that coming out soon, but I'm glad I saw them again. What they're building is really interesting. So it's a collaborative 3D builder. Their sort of argument is like designing 3D spaces and objects and stuff right now, you either need Unreal Engine or Unity or Maya, and they got a pretty steep learning curve. And they also are not very collaborative. You have to deal with files and all sorts of other stuff. So they're trying to build an online web-based 3D builder. Their analogy is they want to build the Figma for 3D building, 3D creation. So it's a private beta right now, but it's basically an online builder where you can collaborate, have multiple people, and work on building 3D objects, 3D environments. That's part of it. And they also have said that that's been used on virtual production. I'm not entirely sure what kind of virtual production, so I'd be curious to learn more about that. But in addition to animation and all sorts of other applications that you would use 3D building for. Now, the building part is sort of one part of it, and the collaborative building part is one part of it. But what they've also been rolling out and introducing is using AI to render your 3D scene. So it's sort of like style transfer, which is sort of like you can give it your mesh or your sort of like gray objects that you build in a 3D space that look like objects, but they don't have any texture or lighting or anything like that. And you can run it through AI and then give it some direction and tell it, okay, like this blocky thing here is supposed to be a car driving down a street that looks like cyberpunk. And so it can style the entire scene so it looks like that. So I saw some demos from this, and this actually came out of one of the competitors in the AILA competition, Jonathan Mueller. And so he was doing similar things where he would build a scene in Maya or Unreal and then run it through AI with style transfer and give it different looks or different styles, or use it to kind of like make it look, kind of do like a lo-fi animation in one of the platforms, and then do a lot of all of the complicated shading and rendering, let AI handle that part. So it seems like they're doing sort of a similar thing, but what they said is you can have a lot more fine-tuned control and select your specific objects or your specific planes, and then give it specific style AI instructions of what you want each specific thing to look like. So you're not just exporting the entire shot and giving it to AI and trying to have it convert the entire shot. You can have more fine-tuned control, which also helps with getting more consistent images and more consistent looks in the scene. That was my understanding. There was like a demo video running about it, but really interesting and a really clever way of utilizing both being able to have a tool that's collaborative and still obviously requires artists and stuff to build the things, but then using AI to help speed up some of the other processes of being able to finish and design the rest of the scene. All right, and last one, the Freeaim VR Shoes. So Disney came out with the Holotile a couple months ago, and it kind of went viral online. It was a floor with a bunch of tiles where you could walk, and it would keep you in place, and you can move around, with the idea being this would be ideal for if you were in a virtual space with a headset on and you walked around. You could walk around in the virtual space without having to have a huge space to walk around in. Super cool demo. Obviously, you need to be Disney. Right now, it's not publicly available, and you need to have a space where you can convert your entire floor. Freeaim kind of flipped that, and they built shoes that you can walk in place with the shoes. So these are motorized attachments that go onto your feet. They've got motors, wheels, some other stuff happening underneath the hood. And you basically just walk in place, and using the motors and the wheels, it keeps you in place. You can move side to side, you can turn, move around. You got demo videos of one of the guys moving through a virtual world. So yeah, it's pretty much a nice solution to the issue of being able to walk around a virtual space when you're in a confined physical space. I know that's not really video specific related, but I get crazy motion sickness in virtual reality if I'm like sitting or standing in place and the virtual world is moving around me. So if I'm able to like physically walk around a virtual space, if I need to like check out a scene, or if I'm doing previs, I'm trying to like move around an area to like figure out shot design or something. If I could do that with virtual shoes and move around the space more efficiently and not get motion sickness, that'd be awesome. So really excited to see where, when the shoes come out, they said they're rolling it out for enterprise right now, and that they would be released next year in 2025. So really cool to see that. And also it's really cool to have another way to move around virtual spaces. And that's it. Those were the top 4 things that I saw that were specifically related to video. And again, if you're far more familiar with the AR VR world and you're like, you're a fool, AWE is not the place for that, then please let me know what is the place for video and spatial video, because I'm very curious about that. But in the virtual reality space, there were a lot of other really interesting things there. You can kind of group them into buckets. There were a lot of industrial applications, and that's not surprising. That's also probably one of the biggest growth areas, because even if you listen to MKBHD's interview recently with Tim Cook, and they asked him about the Vision Pro and like sales, and did it like to not take off as much as you thought it would? And they said like, yeah, the biggest growth is in industrial applications. And so there were a lot of like industrial applications of AR VR stuff. One of which we did talk to because I thought they were really cool was ForgeFX, which basically builds virtual environments for heavy machinery, so you could train people how to use heavy machinery and other types of things. They said they're working with like different government agencies to do remote training for people on different devices or tools, but you could train people how to use heavy machinery or other objects in virtual reality, and it could actually map the virtual world on top of the actual physical item. So in the demo, they were standing in a cherry picker. I'm sure there's an actual name for that. But they're standing inside a cherry picker with the actual tactile displays, but the virtual world overlays on the displays. So when you touch the virtual object, you feel the real object. So interesting things like that. Also, speaking of tactile, a lot of other companies and solutions to merge the physical world and the digital world. So different gloves that can provide tactile feedback. Some companies that had vests where if you were like getting hit or shot in a game, you could feel it a bit more on different body parts, depending on like what device you're wearing or where you're wearing the devices. A couple of motion tracking options. We did talk to Mokopi, which was another product from Sony, which does some basic full body motion tracking, a little bit more for targeted at like virtual YouTubers or some other kind of lo-fi virtual tracking. Sony also did have another thing under Sony Music, which I don't know why it's under Sony Music division, but scanning objects. They had a object scanner. You could scan physical objects in high fidelity and then map it inside Unreal or some other 3D animation software and animate that object that you just scanned. And then obviously a lot of gaming, a lot of immersive experiences, something that we've already seen works really well in AR and VR. A lot of use cases and applications there that I saw at AWE. Oh yeah, one thing I also did not see, which I expect to maybe see more of, did not really see much in the realm of photogrammetry, Gaussian splatting, nerfs. I kind of expected to see maybe something more with being able to scan real environments, bring them into a virtual space in a more simplified way, or like Luma, Belinga, tools like that. Didn't see that as much either. I don't know. Just maybe just not the right venue for that kind of stuff, or maybe it hasn't gotten there yet. And then they also had a history of VR museum where they had every device and headset that they could kind of get, from the Nintendo VR to the first Oculus to all of the versions of the various headsets that came out. But the one that was my favorite was they did have a version or copy of the headset from the Aladdin ride at Disney Quest. This thing's huge, but I do remember this ride. I don't know if I actually ever went on it, but I remember seeing it when I was at Disney Quest, I think once, when it was open. It was ahead of its time, but it was a very cool place. It was a very expensive place. But they had a lot of cool stuff there. So that was really neat to see that Aladdin headset. Yeah, anyways, it was really interesting to see a lot of this stuff. I feel like they're categorized in a lot of separate buckets, virtual reality, virtual production, filmmaking, but I feel like they're all just meshing more and more. Gaming as another category, but I feel like they're all just meshing more and more. Virtual production, you got to build a virtual environment for that. That virtual environment, sometimes you need AR, VR tools to build and explore that. You've got a virtual environment that can turn into a game, that can turn into experience that you move around in, or that you can explore later as another product. A lot of overlap, a lot of stuff, which I feel like they're more intertwined or will be more intertwined than we categorize them as right now. Anyways, that is it for my tangent on the merging of all sorts of media entertainment. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, let me know what you thought about the products I mentioned in the comments below, and also if I missed stuff that I should have seen at AWE that was about a video, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next episode.